Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Today is Tuesday, October 15th, and it has been a crazy, wild day in the NFL. Not one, not two, but three massive pieces of news coming out of the biggest league in the country. We'll talk about all three of them to start off the show. And of course, it is Tuesday, so we're going to get through our rankings. The NFL Power Rankings coming out later, and of course, the NCAA Top 25. But before we get into any of those things, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around while talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Rankings Tuesday. But like I was saying, we're going to start off this show with two of the biggest pieces of breaking news that we have had in the NFL all season long. The first two blockbuster trades were made. Two huge wide receivers are moving to the two teams that played on Monday night. Both of these teams obviously had to make some changes. Both the Bills and the Jets needed to make some upgrades at receiver, and both of them pulled the trigger. Relatively inexpensive trades for some guys that I think can really help and elevate these two teams. We're going to start off with the news that broke first. Davante Adams, the disgruntled wide receiver for the Raiders, has his reunion with his former quarterback, the guy that he spent so long with in Green Bay to start out his career. Aaron Rodgers joins the New York Jets. This is a simple trade. The Jets send over a conditional third-round pick. The conditions for this pick that could turn into a second-round pick are as follows. If Davante Adams makes the first or second team All-Pro, it becomes a second-round pick. If the Jets, as a team, make the AFC Championship game or Super Bowl and Davante Adams is on the active roster, if he is healthy and playing in the AFC Championship game or the Super Bowl, it becomes a second-round pick. Let's break down this move a little bit more. Obviously, the Jets have made win-now decisions. They are a team that is saying, screw the future. We are going to go all in now. We are going all in, push all of our chips to the table. We have Aaron Rodgers. We have him at the twilight of his career. We are going to win while he is here. We've seen that, especially in the last couple of weeks. Last week, they fire Robert Saleh in a move that is questionable. Lots of questions surrounding that move. Obviously, it wasn't the 100% right answer after 1 week. Still can be proven wrong. Still feels a little premature to fire your coach after just 5 weeks when it wasn't really his fault. Then, today, they trade for Davante Adams. They are going all in. Aaron Rodgers has been force-feeding the ball to Garrett Wilson because no one else on this team, aside from Allen Lazard, who, like Rodgers tends to have, is one of Rodgers' favorite. Allen Lazard, if you remember, his story was on the practice squad for the Jacksonville Jaguars when then Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers was like, that guy. I want that guy. He's the guy that I want on my team catching balls. And then the rest is history. He makes a couple of big plays, sticks around, now just follows Aaron Rodgers everywhere. He catches another Aaron Rodgers Hail Mary last night, a huge play to keep them in this game. Aaron Rodgers is a master at that play, but Allen Lazard has been contributing. Obviously, the question with bringing in Davante Adams is how is this going to affect the offense? The offense has been the biggest question mark of this team when we take a look at what they have been expected to do versus what they are doing. People have braised comparisons of this Jets offense to last year's Jets offense. This year's Jets offense is on the exact same scoring pace as last year's Jets offense. Both Aaron Rodgers-led Jets and the Zach Wilson-led Jets have scored 113 points through 6 weeks. Not the greatest look, but now they get help. Garrett Wilson has been awesome. Garrett Wilson is a number one receiver in the NFL. I've heard people say maybe he's not cut out to be a number one receiver. He is. He just wasn't 100% on the same page with Aaron Rodgers. And I think that's more on Aaron Rodgers than it is Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson showed up to camp. Aaron Rodgers did not. And when he's with a new team, Aaron Rodgers, especially a guy like Aaron Rodgers that is so ingrained with specific guys, getting on the same page with them, he needs to be on time to practice so that they can figure it out. And I think that's a lot to blame with this slow start. But now Davante Adams comes in. And I don't think, contrary to what a lot of people are saying, this is going to take away Garrett Wilson. He was on pace for 190 targets. That is a ridiculous amount of targets. He's been targeted 67 times through 6 weeks of the season. This is not something where we say, okay, we're no longer going to get value out of Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson will continue to have value in this offense. Davante Adams comes over, and this is a trade on paper that I think works really well, right? Obviously, this is a Jets team that is in win now mode. We've broken down all the moves they've made to stay in win now mode. Timeline fits with an older Davante Adams. He's back with the quarterback that's brought him all the success. And Davante Adams, with his elite ability to catch the ball, stay on the same page as Aaron Rodgers, that two-headed monster with Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson. First of all, Garrett Wilson won't be getting all those double teams anymore, which I think is definitely hampering his ability to get open and catch the ball. Second of all, think of how it's going to be impossible to cover this offense. With the brain and arm talent of Aaron Rodgers, this offense, in theory, should get a lot better. Now, anything can happen. We don't know exactly how it's going to gel, but I'm looking at this trade and I'm saying, you know what? This is a win-win for both sides. The Raiders get something, and that's really all they can expect after basically it seems like he wasn't going to play the rest of the season for the Raiders at all. The Jets get arguably a top 5 receiver, and I think we're going to see him return to form this year, or return to form after leaving Green Bay, because he's going to have his old running mate back. This should be a lot of fun in New York. Maybe I'm getting a little too high on them, but the way that defense is playing, getting that extra spark on offense is going to push them over the top, and they would have won at least 2 or 3 of the games that they've lost with Davante Adams on this team. Getting over to the other wide receiver trade. I know we just went on and on about this, but that was not the only major move that took place with wide receivers in the NFL today. The Buffalo Bills, a team victorious on a sloppy Monday Night Football game over the New York Jets, currently on top of the AFC East, said, we need a receiver. And that has been evident. Obviously, the Bills and receivers have had an interesting timeline. They let Stephon Diggs walk. They trade Stephon Diggs to the Houston Texans. He's having a nice little season as a number 2 behind Nico Collins. Stepped in nicely as the wide receiver 1 last week, something that we all know he has the ability to do. But the Bills saw that and they said, we missed that. We need a number 1 for Josh Allen. He can't be throwing up these prayers to Khalil Shakir. We can't see what happened 2 weeks ago without Khalil Shakir, how that offense imploded. They go out and they get Amari Cooper from the Browns. And I want to start with this from the Bills' perspective, and then we'll get to the Browns' perspective. From the Bills' perspective, they are a team that is trying to compete, and I do think this pushes them over the top a little bit. The way, again, this is going to sound a lot of repeat like it does with the Jets getting Davante Adams. Excuse me, not quite the same because these two haven't played together yet, but still, the way that defense is playing. We saw the secondary really step up yesterday. Taylor Rapp, specifically in the secondary, made 3 game-saving plays, breaking up 2 passes in the end zone, taking down Breece Hall at like the 5-yard line. This was a excellent game by the Bills defense. They're getting a good pass rush against a solid offensive line that New York had. Their pass rush had been instrumental. They still are going to get carved up against the run, but Josh Allen is a special quarterback, and we've seen that time in and time out again and again this season. The way that Josh Allen has been able to push the ball downfield in situations where any other quarterback would throw it away, get sacked, throw an interception, he is finding ways to get the ball to his receivers downfield at the sideline, right on the edge of the field. That is not a normal thing for a quarterback to be able to do, and yet it's becoming routine for Josh Allen to be able to pull something like that off. He now gets a number one receiver back, and we've seen earlier on in Josh Allen's career how much of a leap he can make when he gets a wide receiver one. Obviously, that was Stephon Diggs earlier on in his career. His first couple of seasons with the Bills, he was improving, and then he gets Stephon Diggs and he shoots up all the way to the top. He continues to get better and better, and once he gets that true number one wide receiver talent, he shoots up. And we've seen this before with Amari Cooper. He was on the Raiders, kind of struggling, gets traded to the Cowboys. Immediately, Dak improves. The Cowboys improve. Amari Cooper looks so much better. Then the Cowboys, for some reason, something that I still don't understand, trade Amari Cooper to the Browns. The Browns make the playoffs. The Browns improve. Amari Cooper plays great football, especially with Joe Flacco, a strong-armed quarterback that can get it to him down the field. Sound familiar? Sound like anybody that is currently on the Buffalo Bills, a team that just traded for Amari Cooper? Amari Cooper, who gets to a new team, his third traded team in his career, gets with a quarterback that desperately needed a number one, and now can be that number one guy with someone competent at quarterback. That's what we have been waiting on this whole time, because Amari Cooper has flashed his skill. He hasn't had the most productive, most exciting year to see, but from the Bills' standpoint, this was a must-get, and I think this absolutely makes them title contenders. That is something to think about. Now, from the Browns' perspective, this says the opposite message. Despite of what Coach Kevin Stefanski has said, despite of what the front office has said, they are in panic mode. Deshaun Watson is not the answer, and they know it. They can continue to say Deshaun Watson gives us the best chance to win. They can continue to lie to our faces. Everybody knows he does not. He is playing like the worst quarterback in all of football, but not arguably. He is playing like the worst quarterback in all of football. Before the second half of the game against the Eagles, he was 0 for 26 on the season on third down. They had not converted a third down all season long until last week. That is not a normal stat, and yet when I say it, it doesn't surprise you, does it? It's just the way that the Browns are playing. The Browns' offense under Deshaun Watson is a mess. It is a unit that cannot get anything done, and the sooner that the Browns accept that, the sooner they can get back to winning football. This is a team that made the playoffs last year with 4 different quarterbacks. Most of those 3 weeks were not done with Deshaun Watson. Now, granted, the defense was playing better. This is not just a Deshaun Watson issue. The defense is not playing the same level of defense that they were playing last year, but that is a tough ask for any team to be able to play elite level defense for 34 straight football games. That is not something you can expect out of a defense. You should expect a little better, but elite season in, season out is not something that you can realistically expect from a super tough positions to play. The Browns are imploding. They need to find out how to get out of this Deshaun Watson contract desperately, and until then, they are going to go back to being bottom feeders. Deshaun Watson, we talked about it yesterday, is owed $45 million this year, $45 million next year, $45 million the year after that. The $72 million dead cap hit if he is released every single year. That is an awful situation to be in. They can't extend him to rework this contract. Either way, they're going to have to give him money. He's not going to agree to any kind of restructure that puts it in incentives because he's not going to see the field then. This is a guy that is just going to coast, and the Browns have screwed themselves over for the next 10 years with this contract, with this situation. The Browns, as we see, by the moves they're making, by selling already just after 6 weeks, are panicking. This is not a good situation for the Browns. They're getting Nick Chubb back, so maybe there's a little bit of a positive. But I wouldn't be surprised if he looks good this week, next week, if he is no longer a member of the Browns football team after that. If a team tries and makes a trade for anybody on that roster. Other than Myles Garrett, I think everyone is tradable. I think they are going to come crashing down to the bottom soon, and this is just a mess of a franchise, and they need to figure out a way of this out of this contract right now. But let me know what you think. 2 massive trades from 4 wide receivers in the NFL. I think these are moves that will really benefit both the Bills and the Jets. Push them at least a tier up. Maybe not to Super Bowl contenders, but both of them firmly into playoff contenders after this move. Let me know what you think, though. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we have one more massive piece of NFL news to talk over. A crazy day in the NFL. This time, a quarterback change in the NFL in Pittsburgh. So make sure you stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Today is Tuesday, October 15th, and it has been a wild day in the NFL. If you are just tuning in, we just went over the 2 massive blockbuster trades that took place earlier on today, with the Jets acquiring Davante Adams from the Raiders and the Buffalo Bills grabbing wide receiver Amari Cooper from the Browns. In this segment, we continue our breakdown of the crazy news out of the NFL, this time in the realm of quarterbacks. Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, a conversation we have had ad nauseum, a whole bunch throughout this whole offseason, has another foil to it. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those 2 things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sport, October 15th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into Justin Fields and the Steelers, a quarterback change in Pittsburgh, something that we have talked a lot about throughout our whole coverage of the NFL offseason. It has been one of those big subjects that we have talked a lot about. Justin Fields versus Russell Wilson. And it seems like at the end of the preseason, we had an answer. I talked a lot about it when we were breaking this original question down. It was the last quarterback who's going to start in Pittsburgh. I know my thoughts were Justin Fields should be the starter. And through 6 weeks, Justin Fields has looked competent, hasn't looked perfect, hasn't looked awesome, hasn't looked elite, but he's looked solid. He's done his job. He's won more games than he's lost. He's looked 4-2, and in a couple of those games, he's looked really good in. Justin Fields comes in and plays good football for the Steelers. Now, he wasn't named the starter out of preseason. The starter that was named was Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson hurt after the preseason, in the preseason, doesn't start. Now he is fully healthy. Now there is another quarterback competition. And I don't want to go against Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin has been a coach for 17 years in the NFL, and for 17 years in the NFL, he hasn't had a losing record yet. He has done this, yes, a lot with Big Ben, but he's also done this with the likes of Duck Hodges, with the likes of Mason Rudolph, with the likes of Kenny Pickett, with the likes of Mason Rudolph again, right? These are not world beaters at quarterbacks. These are not guys that you say, yes, that's an easy quarterback decision to make. You made the right one. The quarterback situation for the Steelers is undeniably, at least in my opinion, undeniably better than it was last season. You have your choice of a fringe Hall of Fame quarterback in Russell Wilson if he's able to play at that elite level for another couple of years, or a young guy that has a lot of promise and has continued to show a lot of promise in his first 6 starts for your team in Justin Fields. Now, I have made my thoughts known. I think Justin Fields is, at least on a quarterback scale, the same as Russell Wilson when we talk about pure throwing the ball. Maybe Russell Wilson has a bit of an edge when it comes to making these throws and decisions, but I think that extra element of rushing that Justin Fields brings pushes him over the top of Russell Wilson. And we've seen that. We've seen his legs be the difference in a lot of games, including last week, the game where he wasn't the most effective through the air. He was about 60% completion, a little bit less than that. 145 yards passing. Wasn't great, but that's fine. He's only had one really explosive passing game. But on the ground, 11 for 59, almost 6 yards a carry there, for 2 touchdowns as well. What he's able to do with his legs adds a whole nother element, makes it a lot harder to gauge what the Steelers are doing. And I don't understand. I truly don't understand why Mike Tomlin is saying now, after a dominant victory, one where they absolutely killed, yes, a bad team in the Raiders, but they absolutely dominated them on all levels of the field. Why now he's making that change? A locker room and an NFL team is only as good as the players are bought in. And I'm not saying that people are going to stop buying into Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin has earned the respect to make any decision he's going to make. But this one is a little puzzling to me. I'm looking at this one and I'm saying I can't truly think this is like a Drake May, Jacoby Brissett situation where the locker room is saying, we want this guy, he's better. I can't imagine that this locker room is clamoring for Russell Wilson to be the starter. I can't imagine that with the Steelers being 4-2 early on in this season, that they're saying, you know what, we 100% don't want Justin Fields in there. And I can see a world where this works. I can see a fun world where, maybe you run just a straight up 2-quarterback system. That would be insane. I don't think there's any way they do that. But I can see a world where you have Russell Wilson taking the snap, Justin Fields lined up at running back, and have a true 2-quarterback system where you have handoff passes all the time, screen pass, double pass kind of situations all the time. That would be insane. I do not expect that to happen. And also, I'm not sure that would even work. But I think that would be a fun thing to experiment with if they wanted to try that. And I'm also not against letting Russell Wilson get in the game, seeing if he really is the better option. But benching Justin Fields after a win, and a dominant win in that, I just don't get. This is one of those moves where the Steelers are, I'm not going to say they're a good team. They're consistently around the 20 mark in my power rankings. And in the next segment, we will see where I have them when we get into our power rankings on this Ranking Tuesday. But this move just scratches me as odd. I do understand if they make this move after the Cowboys game, for instance, when Justin Fields, A, looked horrible, and B, they lost the game. But in a game where Justin Fields was probably the biggest difference maker, the one that opened up the run game for Najee Harris to have a huge game, he scored 2 touchdowns with his legs and was one of the biggest reasons why you won the game. And you won. Why make the move now? That's my only question. I know Russell Wilson is healthy, and it's fine to have a competition, but you're going to risk splitting the locker room And you can't do that in the NFL and continue to win football games. That locker room needs to be together. They need to be on the same page, especially on a Steelers team that offensively just isn't as talented as everyone else. Defensively, they can compete, but offensively, they're just not as talented as everyone else, and they can't be split. They really can't. That's just not how it's going to work. But I'm not in a position to question Mike Tomlin. We'll see what happens. That is a huge story, potentially a QB change in Pittsburgh. Mike Tomlin says there's a chance Russell Wilson starts. I'd hope he doesn't. I think that's the wrong move for Pittsburgh, but I also think it might be worth a shot. But let me know what you think. I would love to hear your thoughts on everything that's going on in Pittsburgh, a wild situation with quarterbacks. When we come back after this short break, we are going to get into our rankings. It is Ranking Tuesday, of course, so we're going to start off with our NFL Power Rankings. Ranks 32 to 17 coming up next, so stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube. Absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Tuesday, October 15th. If you are just tuning in, we've just finished going over the massive 3-piece of breaking news in the NFL. The 2 wide receivers traded and the potential quarterback change in Pittsburgh. In this segment, we turn our attention to Rankings Tuesday. That's right, every Tuesday we do NFL Power Rankings and NCAA Top 25. We're going to start off with the Power Rankings, numbers 32 to 17. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those 2 things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday, October 15th. But like I was saying, getting into the NFL Power Rankings, starting at numbers 32 to 17. And at number 32, for their second time this season, the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars are a team that I thought was making some improvements. They were heading off to London after getting their first win of the season, but now they look just demoralized. And that's the biggest thing that makes them fall to number 31 or number 32. I don't necessarily think that the Jaguars are the worst team in football, but I think they have the worst locker room in football, I'll say. Right? Doug Peterson came on after the game and said they needed to change their culture. But that's his job, right? That's his job to set the culture. They need to fire their head coach. I think that is something that will make a difference for this team. Doug Peterson is not making the difference that he has made the last couple of seasons. He needs to get out of there. They need to bring new life into it. There's a lot of problems with this team. Firstly, the defense, atrocious, awful, always has been, will be for a long time. They don't really have the personnel to run the defensive scheme they're running. That's going to continue to be a problem. 2, as has been an issue with the Jacksonville Jaguars throughout all of Trevor Lawrence's career, it's dropped passes. For whatever reason, Maybe he just throws the ball a weird way, but the receivers find a way to drop his passes all the time. There were 4, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4 dropped interceptions in the game in London last Sunday that would have kept the Jaguars in the game. Brian Thomas dropped 1. Christian Kirk dropped 1. Gabe Davis dropped 2. These are huge moments in games that would make what we're looking at this team be completely different. That is not to say that Trevor Lawrence is not to blame. In fact, he's number 3. Trevor Lawrence has not played his best football. Trevor Lawrence has made mistakes, lots of mistakes with his decision making. Number 4, the run game has failed to get going. There are problems on problems on problems with this team. But I think if you fix number 1, which is the culture, which is the head coach, they jump up probably to around 26, 25 area. I think this team is more talented than 32, but they are not playing like it. They are demoralized. At 31, it's the Cleveland Browns. We have talked a lot already on this show about how bad the Cleveland Browns are. They, in my opinion, are the worst team in football, but because, like I explained with the Jaguars, they don't have any of that feeling in their game. They feel demoralized over there. The Jaguars are below them. The Cleveland Browns are not far behind them. And I don't think this is a coaching issue. This is strictly a quarterback issue. Now, they traded away Amari Cooper. This list, full disclosure, was made before that trade happened. So that did not have that taken into account. Still, though, I think I would keep it the same. The Cleveland Browns are a team that is in deep, deep trouble. They need to find a situation quick, and that situation, in my opinion, is putting Jameis Winston in the football game. Excuse me. All right, well, it's not wanting to move on. But number 30 here for you. Just give me 1 second. Number 30 here for you is the Las Vegas Raiders. The Las Vegas Raiders, another team that is having a lot of issues. They've just traded away their star receiver. They're not getting a lot of answers out of their quarterback position right now. Their quarterback position is a little bit of a mess. A lot of bit of a mess, actually, if you ask me. You've had a lot of switches throughout the game, depending on how it is going. You've had a lot of different options at quarterback. Both Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell are not really making that difference that you expect a guy like them to make. They have a solid roster. Max Crosby, a guy that was in contention for Defensive Player of the Year in the preseason, and yet they can't get anything going. The Raiders continue to be an issue. They're down at number 30. At number 29, it is the Panthers. The Carolina Panthers here at number 29. They're just falling back. And I heard some people asking for Bryce Young to come back in. Maybe it's time. Maybe he's learned his lesson on the bench. Andy Dalton, for all that he did in his first couple of starts, coming in and playing solid football, is not seeming to be the answer. That is because this defense, especially, is horrible. Arguably the worst defense in all of football. That was always going to happen with the way that they were playing. But still, lots and lots of issues with this Carolina Panthers team. I don't think they make the change at quarterback. I don't think they're going to do it quite yet, but I wouldn't be shocked if Bryce Young gets a shot at starting yet again later on in this season. At number 28, it's the Tennessee Titans. The Titans, yet again, find a way to lose this game. This was the best game by Will Levis. He barely turned the ball over, which has been the issue over and over and over again with this team. Will Levis played his cleanest football. It still wasn't clean football. He ended up throwing an interception at the end, but he also only threw for about 70 yards in this game. So not the greatest way to play, but again, I've talked a lot about this Titans defense. It's a good Titans defense. The offense is playing better. If Will Levis can put up 200 yards without throwing an interception, they win most of these games. They got screwed over a little bit by some bad calls in this one, by a weird non-call on a pass interference on DeAndre Hopkins, but still, they lose a game. They're not very good. The Titans are down there at 28. At 27, we have the New England Patriots. They are actually our biggest risers of the week. They were at number 32 last week. They are up to number 27 now. Drake May made his debut, and he looked really good. He threw for 243 yards, 3 touchdowns. Yes, 2 interceptions. Yes, a fumble against a solid Texans defense. He had the most passing yards of any quarterback, period, all season against this Texans defense. And that was his first start ever. He had a beautiful deep ball down the sideline for his first touchdown. He really settled in after a little bit of a rough start. He looked really good. There's lots of reasons to be optimistic about your team over there in New England. They're going to continue to get better. I was very, very impressed by Drake May in his first start. At 26, it's the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins were on a bye. But we got news that Tua will 100% play, which in and of itself is a win for them. Their team without him has been a mess, and if you look at their schedule down the stretch, it is not something that you want to be struggling in. Now, that division is bad. They're currently second in the division, but their last couple weeks of the season for the Miami Dolphins, you get the Packers, the Jets, the Texans, the Niners, the Browns, and the Jets again. Almost all of those teams are in the top 10, or at least the top half of our rankings today. That is not an easy stretch to end your season. If they want to make the playoffs, they need to turn it around now. They need to go on a run now. They cannot lose these games to the Colts, to the Cardinals, to the Bills, to the Rams, to the Raiders, to the Patriots. They cannot lose these next couple of games if they want any shot of making the playoffs. And Tua targeting a comeback week 8 against the Cardinals, he's going to need to be there. They need to show me that they can improve and win a couple games against a better team than the Patriots with Jacoby Brissett under center. The Miami Dolphins are at 26. At 25, it's the New York Giants. The Giants offense was awful. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. The Giants offense was awful, but their defense showed a lot. I was very impressed by that defense. Dexter Lawrence, just about as good as anybody in the entire league at his position. Brian Burns had his first real amazing game coming off the edge, this time not opposite of Kayvon Thibodeau. Azeez Ojulari played great defense. That defense is awesome. It really is. I'm very optimistic about that defense. Daniel Jones and that offense, on the other hand, not so much. They, fingers crossed, should get Malik Neighbors back next game, but he's been missing 2 straight games with a concussion. Nothing is certain. Take your time with him. This season doesn't really matter. Make sure he's fully back healthy. Don't rush him back. The Giants, I think, are the best of the worst, is how I'm going to put it. They're a solid team. They're definitely not a good team. At number 24, it's the Dallas Cowboys. They are our biggest fallers of the week, down 7 spots to number 24. They got lit up by the Lions, and the Lions are a great team, but that is a pattern. When we were breaking down this game, doing our predictions, we said the Lions are the kryptonite for the Cowboys, and oh my God, they were. The Cowboys defense cannot stop the run. The Lions thrive on the run, and they pass off that run. It was a blowout. It was carnage. It was brutal to watch. Jerry Jones is still doing damage control today. He is yelling at his own reporters, his own friends. The Cowboys were embarrassed. They were laughed out of their building, and that is not how you want to look. The Cowboys are on their last leg. They are almost in that bottom tier. The Cowboys, not a good look for them. At 23, it's the Cincinnati Bengals. That defense looked a lot better. Granted, against a bad Giants offense. But that defense was able to slow down a team, which against any team, they weren't able to do against the Panthers. They got their 2 interior offensive linemen back, and I think that made a huge difference. They still weren't able to put together a full game. The offense was shut down when the defense was doing good, and the defense can't do anything when the offense is doing good. I need to see a complete game out of them before I reward them, but there was a lot to like seeing out of these Cincinnati Bengals. Maybe they can find a way to turn their season around. At number 22, it's the New Orleans Saints. The Saints' rookie quarterback, Spencer Rattler, looked really good. He puts up 27 points in the second quarter, an awesome second quarter with almost no weapons. The defense needs some work. They picked off Baker Mayfield 3 times, but they also gave up 51 points. not gave up 51 points. There was a scoop and score in there, but still, they need to play better. They need to play more together defensively. Lots of issues with this team. They need to play better. The offense looked solid under Spencer Rattler, and I think there's a real reason to think Spencer Rattler might be a better quarterback for this team than Derek Carr, but we'll see. He gets at least one more week before Derek Carr is going to be ready. We'll see on Thursday against the Broncos a good passing defense. At number 21, it is those Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers we talked a lot about, and honestly, I might again, this list was made before the news broke that the Steelers were benching Justin Fields. I might slide them down a slot, honestly, with that new news. This is not a good move in terms of morale. We talked about it last segment in terms of on-field decision. Again, I could be way off on this, but I just don't understand this move. It doesn't make a lot of sense. They were getting some momentum. They had just blown out the Raiders. Run with it. Don't hold it back. Don't stop it. Just let it play out until it goes bad. Then make that move. Andre asks why they're benching Fields. That's a great question. I have no idea. They're 4-2. They're winning football games with him. He adds an extra element. I really don't understand. But I guess they had said Russell Wilson was the starter. He just wasn't healthy. And now that he's healthy, they're having a competition. I don't understand Mike Tomlin, but he's 17 years in the NFL without a losing season, so I'm not 100% going to question him. I'm just going to tell him I think he's wrong. At number 20, it's those Denver Broncos. The defense lost Pat Surtain. Hopefully he comes back because he was playing Defensive Player of the Year level defense, right? Getting back to the Steelers real quick, Andre says the run game is even better because of his rushing threat. That's exactly what I said in that last segment. You are right on the money there. Adding 2 touchdowns on the ground, you're absolutely right. Does not make any sense to me. But the Broncos at number 20 here, Bo Nix is playing solid football. Burns me to admit that. I don't like Bo Nix, but he's playing good football. They just got spurned by the Chargers. Like I said, whoever takes the lead in that game was going to win, but they did look really good in that second half. A lot to be encouraged to take away from this game. The Broncos are a solid football team, and they're up here at 20, their highest rank of the season. They get a big game against the Saints on Thursday night. Whoever wins that one is going to be in a good position in their divisions. Both of those divisions outside of the top is struggling. The Chiefs, for instance. But it should be a lot of fun to watch. At number 19, it's those Los Angeles Chargers. They had a little bit of an emergency with their head coach. Jim Harbaugh had a little bit of heart palpitations, I think is what he called it, the heart flutters or something. He went out there, continued to coach. They won the game. That was a huge win for them. This was for supremacy for second place in that division, for potentially a last-second wildcard berth for one of these teams. That was a huge game for the Chargers to prove that they can play with a mediocre team. That was a tough one, though. The way that second half looked is not very convincing. I think both of those teams are on the exact same level. It's going to be a fun battle when they play later. I'm not too convinced about either of those two teams. At number 18 is the Cardinals. I had a lot of Cardinals stock heading into the season. I really did. I got to start selling it off. That defense is disgusting. That defense is awful. They could not stop anything. They couldn't even get anything going offensively, which seems to be a trend with them just about every other game. Not a good look for this team that's supposed to be winning shootouts in the game they win. They can't put up 20 points in a game. They're not going to be anywhere close, as we saw against the Packers, a good Packers team, but still not very encouraging out of the Arizona Cardinals. Finally, for this segment, and we're going to try to get the graphics back next segment. I apologize about that. Maybe the technical difficulties will end. Can't promise anything. But the Colts at number 17. Anthony Richardson is going to be back, and Joe Flacco has won 3 games. Good for him. This season for the Colts is all about Anthony Richardson, seeing if he is the answer, seeing if he can put something together, see if he can be consistent, and we need to see more Anthony Richardson. I think this is a good Colts team. I think their ceiling is 10 wins and a playoff berth. But also their floor, as we've talked about, they're the most bipolar team in the league. They can't stop the run defensively. But their offense can keep up with anybody, theoretically, with Anthony Richardson in the game. They're at 17. We'll see what happens. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we'll finish up our NFL power rankings, then get into the NCAA top 25. Hopefully, we'll have our graphics back. Again, I apologize for the technical difficulties. We see if we'll get those back, but we'll be right back with the final half of the NFL power rankings coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Tuesday, October 15th. It is Ranking Tuesday. If you are just tuning in, we just finished going over the first half of our NFL Power Rankings. In this segment, we are going to finish off the NFL Power Rankings, number 16 to 1. But before we do that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. You can do the exact same thing with the Super Chat feature on YouTube. Again, you do either of those things, a message should pop up. If you have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday, October 15th. But like I was saying, we are going to get back into our NFL power rankings here. Looks like we're still having those issues. At number 16 in our NFL power rankings, we have the New York Jets. They get their new receiver, Davante Adams. Again, this list was made before that trade was happening, but still, I was impressed by the Jets a little bit last game. Their biggest issue in the first 5 weeks of the season had been their offense. Aaron Rodgers not on the same page with his receivers. He looked solid, completed a Hail Mary. The defense continued to play good, especially in that second half, shutting down the Bills for most of that half. Excuse me. Aaron Rodgers looked really good. That was his best game in a Jets uniform, and now he adds Davante Adams. This is a team that I think is squarely in the playoff conversation. Andre asks, there's Micah Parsons trade rumors sparking. Have the Cowboys lost their minds? They're not going to trade Micah Parsons unless they think there's a 0% chance of re-signing him, and then maybe they will. But I don't think Jerry Jones can let go of his pride enough to do that. We talked about how the Cowboys are number 24 on our list, in case you missed that, but the Cowboys are a bit of a mess. I don't think they're going to trade it. It's the same thing with rumors of Max Crosby being traded. I don't think that's going to happen either, but the NFL has gone crazy today, so anything can happen. I don't expect that to happen, especially with Jerry Jones and his pride at the helm, though. But getting back to the list here, at number 15, it is the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks here have struggled the last couple weeks. They've lost 3 straight. They probably put up their worst performance in all 3 of those games last week against those San Francisco 49ers. San Francisco 49ers are a good team, but that was a massive game for the Seahawks. They had to get that game. They had to prove that they were ready to compete with the 49ers for that division, and they were just unable to do that. It's a shame, but still, this is a good Seahawks team, I think. Their defense, once they get healthy, should start playing better. Mike McDonald needs to coach up that defense the way that granted against bad teams. But that's just how the Seahawks are going to be. They're going to beat the bad teams, lose to the good teams, I think. We will see if they're able to change that trend coming up throughout the season, though. At number 14, we have the Los Angeles Rams, another team off the bye that went up a fair number of spots because of what's happened around the rest of the world of the NFL. Excuse me. Cooper Kupp, rumored to try and make a comeback. He practiced for the first time, I believe, today. Maybe he comes back. That would be a huge get for this Rams team that looked really good in week 1 with Cooper Kupp there. That offense has not been the same without him on the roster. They desperately need their weapons back if they want to make a run at the playoffs in a weak NFC, at least a weak bottom half of the NFC. At number 13, we have the Philadelphia Eagles. They almost lost to the Browns. The Browns, who I think are playing like the worst football team. They can't get anything going offensively. They let the Browns get some momentum going offensively. That is ridiculous. They cannot have that happen. Deshaun Watson, not a good football player. The Eagles, not a good football team right now. I really hate the way that Nick Sirianni is coaching. Obviously, not a hot take there. He is not a great coach, yelling at fans after they squeak by with winning against one of the worst teams in football with their full complement of weapons. Not a good look for this team, but they continue to win because they are stacked, because they have Saquon, because they have A.J. Brown, because they have Devonta Smith, because Jalen Hurts is a good quarterback, but I need to see more out of these guys if they want to hop back into the top 10. At number 12, it is the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills, like I said, I liked a lot of what I saw coming out of that game against the Jets. They squeaked by, but that second half was concerning. They got nothing going offensively. Their defense really stepped up. I love what their defense was able to do, but there is a clear weakness, their run game. Their running defense is awful. Breece Hall was able to run up and down against this team. And Breece Hall's a good running back, but he's been unable to get that going all season long. They need to figure out how to stop the run. Not an easy task to do, but teams are finding their weakness, and I love the trade for Amari Cooper. I think that pushes them up a little bit. Again, this list was made before any of the breaking news today took place. It was made late last night, but I am a big fan of what they did. They're probably a top 10 team with Amari Cooper. At number 11, it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They stand pat at number 11 because everyone in the top 10 won. Basically, everyone in the top 10 won. I was very, very impressed with everyone at the top of the list this week. The Bucs put up 51 points, but the way that they gave up 27 points after going up big is a little concerning. They were able to rebound. They were able to get their minds back on. They were able to get their heads screwed back on, but I think they kind of get their foot off the pedal, and when they do that, they give up a lot of points. That's what happened on Thursday night against the Falcons. They got up big. The Falcons made a comeback. That happened against the Saints now. Again, NFC South matchups, they go crazy. Everyone forgets how to play football halfway through the game, but still, not a very great looking game for their defense, especially in the second quarter. I'm a little concerned about them if they continue to give up these big leads. At number 10, it's the Atlanta Falcons. Falcons, a very good football team. They continue to win the games that they are supposed to win. The Falcons and Kirk Cousins continue to get better and better every single week, and that's really what we're looking for here. Can they continue to improve with their new teams? I really do like what they got, that two-headed monster on the ground game, not overusing Bijan Robinson, getting Tyler Algier involved, using all of their weapons. We got another game with all of their weapons being used, and that is awesome to see. I cannot wait to see how the offense continues to evolve. A new team to the top 10. The first team that's new in the top 10 today, and the only new team in the top 10, that is the Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears, and maybe I'm a little high on them. I understand if you think I'm a little high on them, but Caleb Williams has gotten better every single week. That doesn't seem like something that is going to change. That's not something that seems like it's going to change because they're getting each of their weapons involved slowly. I really do like this Bears team. That offense is incredible, and Caleb has looked great. VJ Money asks, he got offered Baker and Jonathan Taylor for Lamar and Jacobs. You got to take this right. He's following. That's an interesting one. It depends on the rest of you, on how comfortable you are in Baker. I think losing Lamar is going to be a little bit of a question, and the way that Jonathan Taylor has been hurt, he's been out for a little while. I don't know when he comes back. You got to check on the injury status. That's a little bit more of a toss-up. I don't think it's a certainty. I think I lean more towards the Lamar and Josh Jacobs, just because Josh Jacobs also a bell cow back, and I think Lamar is that much better of a quarterback, but I wouldn't be mad about that trade either. I think it's pretty fair. So if you like Jonathan Taylor that much more than Josh Jacobs, go for it. Continuing our top 10 at number 8, it's the Washington Commanders. They get their first loss here since Jaden Daniels burst onto the scene, but it's against a really good Ravens team. That was a shootout. That's what we expected. Jaden Daniels looks awesome. What he's able to do in clutch moments down the stretch in the red zone, how dangerous he is with his feet, with his arms. When they get a run game going again, once Brian Robinson comes back, that team can compete with anybody, and we saw that when they took the Ravens down to the wire. That was a great game. Maybe, maybe they improve their defense in the trade deadline. Maybe then they could beat this team. At number 7, it's the San Francisco 49ers. They came back with a huge game. The running game continued to be an issue. They potentially lose Jordan Mason for another running back injury. That is a huge blow to them. They need that run game to go. I know that they had a solid running back behind him, but I still don't trust it. Not having CMC really makes this offense look different, but Brock Purdy put together his best game, potentially of his career. That was a great game for the 49ers. They have a huge test coming up against the Chiefs this week. This week of football slates is awesome. I cannot wait for it, following a kind of disappointing one. But still, the Niners looked like a complete team for the first time all season long. And that is what we're looking for. That's what we're looking at to see. They're still at number 7. At number 6, it's the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans are a team that just don't have any weaknesses, really. That defense is playing really good. The offense, even without the leading receiver in the NFL and Nico Collins, looked awesome. They added back Joe Mixon, and with Joe Mixon in the mix, that offense is a different weapon. They have a real run game, a extra level outside of just CJ Stroud, and just CJ Stroud is great. Just CJ Stroud keeps them almost a top 5 team in football, but having Joe Mixon, having that running game really be a factor opens up the spacing, kind of like we were talking about with Justin Fields. This is a really, really dangerous team that can compete with anyone. Really, anyone in this top 7 could be at number 1, and I wouldn't be mad about it. At number 5, we have the Green Bay Packers. Jordan Love, for the second straight game, 4 touchdown passes. That is crazy. He has been playing awesome. Romeo Doubs comes back, scores 2 touchdowns. Christian Watson scores a touchdown. Their young weapons are great. That is going to be an explosive offense. And if that defense continues to play the way that they did against the Cardinals, they can destroy just about anybody. At number 4, it's the Baltimore Ravens. They just continue to win football games. Derrick Henry, bulldozing over everyone. Lamar Jackson looking good. We saw Mark Andrews score his first touchdown. That is what we're waiting for. We got Zay Flowers, although he didn't touch the ball in the second half. Still a great game out of him. The Ravens played great football against a great team, and I wish I could move them up, but I just can't because of the teams that are ahead of them and the way that the teams ahead of them are playing. At number 3, it's the Lions. Story of the week, 47-9 over the Cowboys. Absolutely destroyed them, embarrassed them, laughed them out of their own building on their owner's birthday. That was a crazy game. Everything was clicking. They were out there for vengeance. They were out there for blood. They were out there for revenge. That was a brutal, brutal way to win a football game. I love it. That was so much fun to watch. This is a different Lions team. They are tops in the NFC, or arguably the top. We get a battle between them and the number 2 teams, the Minnesota Vikings, this week, and that should be an amazing game. Like I said, lots of great games on this week's slate. The Vikings are at number 2. On a bye, I really thought about moving the Lions up, but they lost Aiden Hutchinson, so I kept them at 3. The Vikings, still undefeated. They have their biggest test of the season. They got past the Packers. They have their biggest test of the season against the Lions coming up this week, and that is my favorite game of the week. Should be a lot of fun. And at number 1, could be controversial, and I understand if it is, the Kansas City Chiefs. They're also coming off a bye. They take on the 49ers this week. That is another one of those games that is going to be awesome on the slate. This Chiefs team just continues to win. 2 straight Super Bowls. They're still undefeated. They find ways to win. Again, I understand if you think the Lions, the Vikings, the Ravens, the Packers, the Texans, the Niners should be over them, but still, this is a Chiefs team that I think can compete and beat just about anyone. Andre asks who I have in the Lions-Vikings game. I'm leaning towards the Vikings. My double check when I do these power rankings is if the team ahead of the team behind them would beat them, I keep them. And the Vikings are one spot ahead of the Lions. I think the only reason is because they don't have Aiden Hutchinson. That's the biggest reason. Andre, like you said, they're going to try and make a move. That's how I assume you heard about Micah Parsons. That's how I assume you heard about Max Crosby being traded. I don't think either of these moves are going to happen. They need to go get someone. Isaac Ukwu looked really good in the preseason for them out of Ole Miss and James Madison. This is a guy that I think they just need a true edge rusher. They just need to go find somebody. But without their defensive player of the year candidate, I don't think they beat the Vikings. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we're going to finish up Rankings Tuesday. We're going to get into our NCAA Top 25 and our Group of 5 Top 5. So make sure you stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Tuesday, October 15th. If you were just tuning in, we just finished going over the NFL Power Rankings as we do every single Tuesday. In this segment, we're finishing off our show, getting into the NCAA Top 25, and of course, our Group of 5 Top 5. But before we do that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday, October 15th. But like I was saying, getting into our NCAA Top 25, we're going to see if we can get our graphics back working here. Nope. All right. So we're going to go back to no graphics. Sorry, apologize about that. But the NCAA Top 25, it's a tough one this week. And we're going to start off in the Group of 5 Top 5. Andre says massive loss for Danny Dimes. Absolutely. They looked awful. The Giants offense did. But the defense looked great. So, it's not all bad in Giant land. But getting back to college football at number 5 in the Group of 5 Top 5. We do the Top 5 Group of 5 teams every week as we track for the playoffs. At number 5, it's Washington State. They've been on this list for a while. Their only loss of the season is to a really good Boise State team. Washington State deserves to get a little more respect because if they run the table and Boise State falls a little bit, I could very easily see them in the college football playoff spot. At number 4, it's Navy. 6-0 is that service academy. We never see that. They have been dominating. They're in the top 25, in the AP top 25 for the first time since like the 40s. That is insane. And joining them is the other service academy member, our number 3, Army. First time they're both in 6-0. First time they are both in the NCAA top 25 since the 20s. That is crazy. That is not a normal thing. This is an awesome year. We could get potentially an Army-Navy game for the playoffs. That could be a lot of fun. Andre says Andrew Thomas out for the season. Giants are cooked. I had not seen that. That is not a good thing. Yeah, you're absolutely right. They are cooked if that is true. I just completely missed that. At number 2 on our group of 5 top 5, it's UNLV. UNLV has suffered one loss this season, and that is to Syracuse in overtime. They have played great football with Haj Malik Williams in the game. They have looked so much better than with Sluka. I am a big fan of this UNLV team. They are number 2 in the group of 5 top 5. And number 1 in the group of 5 top 5 is Boise State. Ashton Genty, your Heisman favorite. They continue to just dominate football games, rushing for 200 yards like it's nothing, rushing for 50-yard touchdowns like it's nothing. This is a crazy, crazy team. But getting into our actual NCAA top 25 here, at number 25, it's UNLV. We just talked about them. They were number 2 on our group of 5 top 5. Haj Malik Williams looks great. That team is putting up 50 points a game with him under center. That is a ridiculous stat. Whoever wins this week between UNLV and Boise State, as long as they are able to win out, should get that spot in the playoffs. But anything can happen. It's going to be an awesome game this week in the group of 5, a must watch. At number 24, it's Pitt. They get a big win over a good Cal team. They are undefeated for the first time in forever. It's been almost 40 years since Pitt was this good at football. I think it was the 80s last time they were undefeated this long into the season. Pitt is a really good football team. They find ways to win. I was not sold on them, but they've beat a couple of good teams in a row that I thought they would lose to. Pitt gets on my ranking at number 24. At number 23, it's Syracuse, a team that I think is criminally underrated. They've lost one game. It was a last-second field goal to Stanford, who not the greatest team, but they're a good team. They've beaten a lot of really solid teams. Georgia Tech, they dominate. They took out NC State, that was respected at the beginning of the year, preseason ranked. I don't think they should have been, but still, preseason ranked. They've taken out UNLV. That is a very, very good football team. And Syracuse, and I think they're an actual threat in the ACC if Miami or Clemson slips up just a little bit later on. At 22, all 3 of those were not ranked last week. At number 2, we get our first team that was ranked in SMU. The Mustangs looked really good. They continue to look really good basically all season long outside of their first game. They got their footing in their transition up to a Power 4 school. They beat Louisville last week. They continue to look good. They are on a path to the ACC title as well. The ACC, don't look now, it's one of the more competitive. It might be just as, if not more competitive than the SEC this year. SMU up 3 spots to number 22. At 21, we have the USC Trojans. The Trojans put Penn State down to the wire. The number 4 ranked team in the country, I believe. I don't have the AP poll out there in front of me, but they take Penn State to overtime. This is a USC team that has its weaknesses. I'm not going to lie to you. It has its weaknesses. It absolutely does. But still, they just took one of the last undefeated Power 5, Power 4 teams in the country to overtime, and they barely lost that game. That was a great game for USC. If they can continue to play like that, they can beat just about anybody. At number 20, it's Oklahoma. They just got absolutely destroyed in the Red River rivalry, a game that is usually close. Not so this year. Oklahoma loses 34-3. That is not a good look for a very proud team, a very good defense, but going up against some contenders in the SEC, they've lost both of them. They are just about out of playoff contention. They're down 5 spots to number 20. At number 19, Indiana, the Hoosiers, undefeated 6-0. They get one of their biggest tests of the season coming up this week against Nebraska. This is going to be a huge test for Curt Cignetti and his team. I think this Indiana team is really good, and outside of a game against Ohio State, I think they could really win 11 games this season, which would be crazy. I cannot wait to see what happens with Indiana. Should be a lot of fun. They're a fun team to watch. At number 18, it's Missouri. Missouri bounced back after a brutal loss to Texas A&M, absolutely destroyed a not-so-good team in UMass, but still some solid things to see. They're able to bounce back. They're not going to wallow in their loss. I think Texas A&M is a very good football team. Missouri stays where they were after last week at number 18. They have a chance to climb or a chance to fall. They lose one more time, they're out. That is basically the same situation as our number 17 team in Ole Miss. They almost beat LSU in Death Valley in a night game. Got taken to overtime. They led every single second of the game, but they just got out-physicaled at the end. That's what happens. That's been their weakness basically every single year for the last 5 years. They can't handle the physicality. It hasn't changed this season, and that is what is going to get them into trouble when they try and compete with the big boys in the SEC. Ole Miss, I don't think quite has it this year. I was tricked again. It happens every year to somebody, to a lot of people. They are down 6 spots to number 17. At number 16, it's K-State. Kansas State up 5 spots after a huge win over Colorado. They got punched in the mouth, but they came back. They look like favorites in the Big 12 after Utah has taken a bit of a tumble. BYU is still there. Iowa State is still there, but Kansas State is looking like one of those big threats in the Big 12 that you should be watching out for. Their quarterback Avery Johnson, their quarterback just continues to get better. I really do like that defense despite their ability to give up big plays, kind of being unmatched, but still. I think this is a really good Kansas State team. They just are a little tiny bit inconsistent, but they're getting better every single week, which is something that I like to see. Again, young college team. It's good to see improvement. At 15, it's Texas A&M. Texas A&M is a team that dominated Missouri. They did their job this week as well on a bye, getting better, probably, hopefully, but I want to see it one more time before I really vault them up. They destroyed Missouri, a fringe top 10 team that was winning close games against solid programs, but still, I need to see one more big win out of this team, one more big win out of Texas A&M before I move them up into the top 12, into the playoff bracket. At number 14, it's BYU. BYU 6-0, another one of those teams that hasn't been undefeated in forever. They look awesome. They really do. They're starting to run that Big 12. Their ability to force turnovers on defense is awesome. That's a huge part of the game. It's tough to rely on if you play against a team that won't turn the ball over. I don't think they win those games, but still, their ability to force turnovers has been a huge part of their game, and it's a skill, and they've been really, really good at it. At 13, it's Boise State. Ashton Jeanty, Heisman winner. We talked about him in our Group of 5 top 5 rankings. They have a huge game this week against UNLV that will basically determine the future of that Group of 5 slot. That is a huge game. Cannot wait to see it this year. At 12, it's Tennessee, a brutal loss, or a brutal almost lost for them. This week is going to be telling for Tennessee. Are they going to be able to beat Alabama at home? Are they going to be able to stay with Alabama at home? We need to see a big game out of Nico Iamvaleta, something he has not been able to do against really good competition yet. I think he can do it. I still believe in this team, but this is their test. This is their test against Alabama, an Alabama team that we'll get to later on, but has been limping a little bit. This is a must-win game for both of these programs. And it's a shame that one of them is going to get knocked out pretty far down because of this loss this week. At number 11, it's LSU. They get a come-from-behind victory against a good Ole Miss team. They came back. Garrett Nussmeier has that potential. He really showed it in this game. That potential to drop back, win football games. He can be relied on when you need him to be relied on. That was a great game by the LSU Tigers. The defense looked good. They're up to number 11. At number 10, it's Alabama. We just talked about it. They're limping into this game on the road against Tennessee. They almost lose to South Carolina. South Carolina picks them off in the end zone, then fumbles to give them that lead. It was not a good game for either of these teams. Then South Carolina has a chance. They score a touchdown, miss the 2-point conversion to tie. Then they get the onside kick. There were lots and lots of mistakes made by Alabama. That is not a good way to go, especially at home. They probably should have lost that game, but they didn't. I'm just not convinced by this Alabama team. After losing to Vandy last week, maybe they were just shook. They need to get right against Tennessee this week. At number 9, it's Notre Dame. Another dominant victory for them. They just continue to pile it up. Well, a lot of these top contenders continue to scramble, continue to not look good. Notre Dame just continues to win football games. They continue to look really, really good at football. Outside of that one game against NIU, they've looked really good. They're putting up a lot of points. That offense seems to have fixed itself. The run game is awesome. And as long as they can throw the ball, they can keep up with just about anybody. At number 8, it's Iowa State. I love this Iowa State team. That defense is locked down. That offense continues to improve, and they don't turn the ball over. That's a lot of very, very important things to do. That's about all you can ask for with a football team. Iowa State is my favorite in the Big 12. The Big 12 is getting a little competitive. They're cannibalizing each other. This should be a lot of fun for the finish in the Big 12. At 7, it's Penn State. A lot of people have them higher, but I did not like what I saw this week against USC. I did not like what I saw earlier on in this season against a couple of teams. I need to see more out of Penn State before I push them back up into the top 3 like some people have them. This is a good Penn State team. No doubt in my mind. They're playoff bound as long as they can continue to play good football, but I'm concerned that they keep starting slow. Against a team like Ohio State, they're not going to be able to start slow and come back. Against a team like even in Indiana, maybe, they're not going to be able to start slow and come back. This is a good football team, but they need to stop with their slow starts. At number 6, Clemson. Domination, and then that game against Georgia. That one I'm pushing out of my mind. Georgia, very good football team. Clemson needs to show they can do it against good teams. They don't have too many opportunities. That'll come in the ACC title game against whoever they play, but probably Miami. But Clemson is on probably the best path to the playoffs right now. I really like where they are set up at. At number 5, it is Georgia. Georgia, again, domination. They just continue to win football games. They continue to not struggle. They haven't put together a masterclass yet, but the SEC is a mess with a capital M, E, and SS. Georgia is playing probably the most consistent football out of all of them, and that is something to keep an eye on outside of Texas. Georgia's at number 5. At number 4, it's Miami. They got a much needed bye week. 2 straight weeks of near losses. They need to get that figured out if they want to continue to be contenders down the stretch here. I believe in this Miami team. I believe in that roster, but they cannot continue to play like they have the last 2 weeks if they want to continue to be this high in the rankings. At number 3, Ohio State. They fall 1 spot after a brutal loss to Oregon. Some bad clock management down the stretch. It's just tough. Some bad calls as well. That was a great game. I don't blame them. They were in Eugene, Oregon, to only lose by 1 point to Oregon on the road. That is a great game. All hats off to Ohio State. I didn't think they looked awful. I thought they looked really good. And I believe in this Ohio State team. In a neutral site game, I think they win. At home, I think they win, but they weren't. They were in Eugene, and they lost that game. I like this. I like what I saw in their biggest test of the season. At number 2, we have Oregon, the team that beat Ohio State. And coming into this week, I thought the winner of that game would be number 1. But we saw what we saw out of these teams. They looked really good. They both did. But they did not look as good as the number 1 team this week, and that was Texas. Texas dominant in every facet of the game. We talked about it when we did our winners and losers. They have the depth that no one else has. They can lose anybody and still be fine. I was so impressed by Texas this week. They are my number 1 team in college football. They can. Breaking down the top 10 real quick. Alabama, Notre Dame, Iowa State, Penn State, Clemson, Georgia, Miami, Ohio State, Oregon, Texas. 11 LSU, and 12 Tennessee. Let me know what you think of my rankings. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Sorry about the technical difficulties today, but I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday, October 15th. We will be back tomorrow talking all things baseball. The Subway Series is looking like it could happen in the World Series after the New York teams both won yesterday. This is going to be a huge, huge game of baseball today. We'll talk about basketball as well as the preseason is starting to wrap up, heat up a little bit. We'll talk about everything that comes out tomorrow and more. I'll see you then. You all have a good one. Bye-bye.
Let's go. I wake up, bit of drool, and my friend, I feel like it's gonna be a